Hello everybody, today we're going to be talking about kitchen safety. And yes, some of this will be review from Food and Nutrition. So let's start with chemical safety. Make sure you're storing your chemicals out of reach of children. A lot of people like to store their cleaning supplies under the sink. If you have little kids, you'll definitely want to make sure that you have safety latches on the cabinet so that kids can't get into them. If you don't, you want to put it out of their reach so they can't get into it, just to keep the kids safe. Chemicals, no matter what, should be stored in the original container, and that way you know what it is. You also have the directions and any warnings that might go along with that chemical. Never mix chemicals. No matter what you're doing, it's not going to be better to clean something if you mix them. You never know what kind of reaction those chemicals will have if you mix them together. So if something needs to be cleaned, use one cleaner. If it doesn't work, use something stronger, but don't mix them together to try to get a better result. Make sure you're storing them away from food. You definitely don't want a side of bleach with your cookies, so make sure that you keep them out of the cabinets with any other food or dishes so that nothing becomes contaminated. If something would be contaminated, somebody gets into a cleaning product and drinks it, you would need to make sure that you have the Poison Control Center number available so that you can call and get advice on what to do for your next steps. A lot of times you'll find that you can get those stickers that you can put in the refrigerator inside a cabinet so that you have that help number very close and easy to use. As you're preparing to talk to the Poison Control Center, it's good to have the product that was ingested close. Check that label for instructions for first aid of what you can do, and then your Poison Control Center can help guide you from there. Next, we're going to talk about preventing cuts. Definitely one of the bigger dangers in the kitchen since there's so many sharp objects. You do want to keep knives sharp. Invest in a knife sharpener so that you can regularly sharpen the knives and keep them nice and sharp. Dull knives you tend to put more pressure on, and so they're more likely to slip and cause injury. If you drop a knife, something's falling, you knock it off the counter, whatever, don't try to catch it. You'll want to back away, let it fall, and then pick up the knife carefully. Trying to catch it, more than likely you're going to probably catch the blade. No matter how good your ninja skills are, you're probably not going to catch the handle of the knife. Do not use a knife to pry open containers. No matter how convenient it may seem, that would be a possibility for it to slip and cause an injury. As you're washing knives, keep them separate. Don't put them into the sink full of dishwater. You won't be able to see the knife. And again, as you reach into the soapy sink full of water, you could grab the blade and injure yourself. Store knives in a safe place. Knife blocks are great because it covers the blade, and you know when you go to grab it, you're going to grab the handle. There's also a lot of knives that come with blade guards so that the blade is covered if you're storing it somewhere else. Also use care with other appliances that might have sharp blades or edges. A blender, a food processor, things like that. When you're cleaning them or using them, keep your fingers away from the blades, and also when you're cleaning them, make sure you're careful so that you don't cut yourself on those blades. If you have broken glass, you drop a glass and it breaks, make sure you're not using bare hands to pick up broken pieces of glass. You want to make sure there's a barrier between your skin and the glass so that you don't cut yourself. You can wear rubber gloves and pick up large pieces so that, again, you have that barrier to help protect your skin. Then use a broom and a dustpan to help sweep up any other smaller pieces. If you still have remaining fragments, you can use a damp paper towel to help pick those up and then put that directly in the trash can. You don't want to use a kitchen towel because some of the fragments of glass can stay in the fibers and then cause some injury later on. If you would cut yourself, first aid tips, you want to cover the wound with a sterile cloth and apply pressure. And that pressure should help to stop the bleeding. For minor cuts, after you've applied pressure, once it's stopped bleeding and the bleeding is slowed, you can go ahead and wash it with soap and water. Once the bleeding is stopped, you can put a topical antiseptic on the cut to help with preventing any kind of infection and help promote healing, and then bandage it. More severe cuts will, again, you're applying pressure to help try to stop the bleeding, but you're more than likely going to have to take a trip to the emergency room to have a doctor look at it and possibly get stitches. Preventing burns, another big danger in the kitchen. Make sure you're using pot holders to take things in and out of the oven or handle any hot pans or handles. Make sure if you have a pan on the stove with the lid on, you lift the lid away from you. That allows the steam to funnel out away from you, because steam can burn. So if you lift it towards yourself, you're funneling the steam right towards your face, and that can cause a steam burn. Don't let kids play near the oven. You might want to have an area where they know that they're not allowed close, and that way you don't have to worry about them accidentally burning themselves or playing with something that they shouldn't. When you're heating liquids in the microwave, they can reach very high temperatures. They can reach boiling temperatures of 212 degrees and not really show signs of boiling. So they can be very hot even if you don't see those bubbles of the boiling water. And sometimes when you add mixtures to it, so maybe you have a drink mix that you're putting in there, it can all of a sudden show those signs of boiling. If you burn yourself, some first aid tips: you'll want to place your the area that was burnt under cold running water. Never apply any kind of ointment or grease that can hold the heat in and cause the burn to become worse. If you would have blisters, do not break the blisters. If the burn is very severe or pain persists, you should contact the doctor so that they can evaluate to see if there's anything that they can do to help with that burn. Preventing fires. Biggest place or cause of house fires is the kitchen. So you definitely want to make sure as you're cooking, you're responsible and you can help prevent any fires from happening in your house. When you're done, turn off the range or oven when it's not in use. Also, make sure you don't leave any flammable items around the stovetop. You don't want to leave a towel on the stovetop or have curtains hanging above the stove. Anything that could easily catch on fire and cause fire to spread if it were to ignite. Don't leave a pan of grease unattended. If you're cooking, especially something with grease, you want to stay in the kitchen, watch what's going on so that if a fire were to ignite, you can handle it easier. If you have grease buildup around the stovetop or on the hood of the stove, you'll want to make sure you clean that regularly to prevent buildup that could catch fire. And make sure you have working smoke alarms in your house and check the batteries regularly. A lot of times I've heard that with daylight savings time, you should always check the batteries of the smoke detectors. Typically, they say you wouldn't necessarily want the smoke alarm in the kitchen because you can get just regular cooking sometimes can set that off, but close to the kitchen so that if something happens, you are alerted right away. If a fire starts, here's some things that you can do to help put that out. If you have it in a pan on the stovetop, slide the lid of the pan over top of the pan. That'll take away the oxygen and help put out the fire. You'll want to turn off the heat and let it sit there and covered for it to cool down so it doesn't reignite. If you don't have the pan lid, you could also use a cookie sheet or a pizza pan and slide that over. Again, leave that on until the pan would cool down so it doesn't reignite. If it's a small fire, you could also put baking soda in the flames. You want to make sure, though, it's baking soda. Baking powder or flour can cause the fire to spread. You never want to use water on a grease fire. That water will instantly turn to steam and can cause basically an explosion of the fire in the house and cause a lot of damage. Don't let the fire get between you and the exit. If you're trying to fight the fire and it starts to spread or starts to move to a place where you wouldn't be able to get out, get yourself out and call for help to help continue fighting that fire. Really only small fires that are containable, you should worry about yourself. Otherwise, call professionals and get the fire department there as soon as possible. You should know how to use a fire extinguisher, and you should have a fire extinguisher close to the kitchen or in the kitchen, and you should know how to use it. As you are learning how to use the fire extinguisher, you should remember the initials PASS, which stands for pull the pin. Aim at the base of the fire, so not just at the flames, you want to go where at the base of where the fire has started. Squeeze the trigger, and then sweep from side to side until the fire appears to be out. If needed, if the fire starts to flame up again, you'll want to repeat that until the fire is out. Falls are another hazard in the kitchen. If you're trying to reach something that's high up on a high shelf, make sure you use something sturdy to stand on. A step stool or a ladder is a great thing to have in the kitchen to help prevent falling over from something that isn't quite as sturdy or shouldn't be stood on. If you spill something, wipe up spills immediately. That will prevent people from slipping. If you have rugs in the kitchen, a lot of times you have tile floor and rugs with you want something with a non-skid backing so it doesn't slip easily and could cause falls. Keep the floor clear of toys, shoes, cords, anything that could possibly be tripped on. Definitely with kids or pets, a lot of times they like to leave things lay, and you want to try to make sure that that's something that's not laying around in the kitchen, because as you are carrying hot foods, you don't want something that can trip and then cause not only a fall, but possibly burns as well. If you do fall, here's some first aid tips. One is if you're bleeding, stop the bleeding, so put pressure on that wound. If you think somebody has a broken bone, you'll want to let them sit, not move them, and try to get help for them so that it doesn't cause a more severe break. If needed, call for help. Preventing electrical shock. Keep water away from electrical appliances. You don't want to set an electrical appliance in a puddle of water on the counter. You also don't want to stand in water on the front if the floor is wet and use an electrical appliance. Never put an appliance that's plugged in into the sink. And you also don't want the cords over the sink. Dry your hands before touching the cords. So if you're trying to unplug something, make sure you have dry hands. Also switches to turn things on and off. You'll want to make sure you have dry hands. Avoid using extension cords in the kitchen. Try to get the appliances close enough so that they can be plugged directly into the outlets. If you need to use an extension cord, use a heavy gauge extension cord instead of a regular one. Don't overload the outlets. You don't want to have all kinds of extenders to have tons of different things plugged in. When unplugging appliances, make sure you grab the plug, not the cord. If you continually grab the cord, it could cause damage to the cord and could cause more of a risk of shock or fire. And if the appliance is damaged, do not use it. First aid for electrical shocks. Make sure you disconnect the appliance. If someone is being shocked, don't touch them if they are connected to the power source. Instead, you'll want to find some sort of non-conducting material that you can use to pull them away. So a wooden stick, a rope, something that you can grab and pull so that you're not touching that person, because if you do, the power or the shock can be transferred to you also. Immediately call 911 to get medical assistance. Choking is another hazard in the kitchen with people who are eating. Someone who can cough or breathe or talk may not need help, even if they have something lodged in their throat. But you definitely want to stay with them and try to get them to cough to help bring anything that might be lodged in their airway up. If the person cannot breathe or talk or cough, you'll want to take action. When you take action, tell somebody to call 911, and that way you know help is on the way. Ask that person for permission to provide them help so that you know that it's okay and that they do need help. The Heimlich maneuver is a good thing to know, and so that is what you would perform to help bring that lodged piece of food out of their throat. If the person's unconscious, do not do the Heimlich maneuver. Instead, you want to help lower them to the floor and make sure emergency help is on the way. Talk to 911 operators so that you can see what you can do to help that person. And here's a visual of the Heimlich maneuver. Basically, you're taking the thumb side of your fist and putting that above the person's belly button. You'll hold the fist and then thrust upward and inward to help dislodge that object. So that's some of the things that you should know first aid wise as you are working in the kitchen, some things to keep you safe so you don't need the first aid. If you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll continue talking and practicing some of these kitchen safety tips throughout the next few days. Have a wonderful day.